The 2022 World Junior Championship is less than 48 hours from getting underway. So today we're going to take a preview of the tournament, explain how it all works, tell you what to expect, and go over some of the top players you're going to see in this tournament. And that's coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, today is the preview video for the 2022 World Junior Championship getting underway here in Alberta between Edmonton and Red Deer on December the 26th on Boxing Day, as the usual tradition continues here. Of course, the World Junior Championships this year is going to have capacity limitations at those arenas to cut down. The Alberta government has imposed a 50% capacity order for all events of that nature. So it's unfortunate that there won't be as many fans in the building, but certainly better than playing in a bubble in front of zero fans. That much we do know for certain now. In case you're not overly familiar with this tournament, here's a very quick overview. Essentially, there's two groups of teams competing for a round-robin style of tournament. Each group has 5 countries participating for a total of 10 in the tournament. They go through a round-robin, and then they do a crossover style of playoffs. So the top 4 teams in each group will participate in the playoff rounds, with the top team in Group A playing number 4 in Group B, and so on. And then B plays A, and the top versus bottom. Then the 2 middle ones cross over, 2 versus 3 sections, and then the winners move on to play in the subsequent rounds on the way to the gold medal matchup. Now, this is a tournament that's extremely tight. I mean, we have a variety of countries that have a lot of success in this tournament. We have not had back-to-back gold medal champions here since the 2008-2009 versions of Team Canada. Ever since then, we've had a different winner each year. Over the past decade, last 10 tournaments, we've had 4 different countries win the gold medal, with Finland, Canada, and the US all winning 3 individually, and then Sweden winning 1. So it's been a long time since the Russians have taken a gold medal, so they're certainly due for a win. But those other 3 countries, predominantly Finland, Canada, and the US, have all had a lot of success winning gold. The Swedes have had a ton of success winning a lot of round-robin matchups, but they've had playoff failures and appearing in the gold medal matchups multiple times and just not getting the job done. So I'm not sure what it is with the Swedish teams that they've seen in the last number of years. They just seem to struggle in the playoff rounds, but it had a really long stretch of undefeated games in the round robin for, I can't remember what the number is now, but it was a long stretch of games there that they went undefeated. So now I'll show you the 2 groups, and then we'll talk about some of the top players to look out for and give you a bit of an overview for each team. We're mainly going to talk about Canada and the US, obviously being in North America myself. They're the players that we're most familiar with. We will touch on Sweden, Finland, and Russia as well. Some of the other countries we're not going to touch on. I don't want to get too long in this video. No disrespect to those countries. They're just not as much of players that we're overly familiar with here to really speak to intelligently, and I don't want to pretend that I know a bunch about players that I actually don't. So let's jump in here. I'll show you groups A and B. Group A consists of Canada, Finland, Germany, the Czech Republic, and Austria. In Group B, we have the USA, Russia, Sweden, Slovakia, and Switzerland. So one of the key matchups you're going to see, for example, in Group A, the big game in that group will be Canada versus Finland. Of course, in Group B side, you're going to have Russia, Sweden, and Russia, USA will also be highly contested matchups. The other countries will certainly have some good games in there as well. The Germans are a team that's been highly, kind of underrated in my opinion. You can't ever take the Swiss for granted. You've even had times where the Slovaks and the Czechs have also been pretty strong too. So like I said, it's a pretty tightly contested tournament, and it's certainly hard to predict year to year who is going to win. And the fact that we haven't had back-to-back winners since 2008-9 just shows you how even the playing field really truly is. Now we'll start here with Team Canada. Of course, I'm Canadian, so by far the players that we are most familiar with, but certainly some interesting storylines to watch with this Canadian team. Of course, head coach Dave Cameron back in the saddle here after a stint coaching his team many years ago, as well as a coaching stint in the NHL with the Ottawa Senators as a head coach, and he had some other assistant coaching gigs as well. He's back after coaching over in Europe for the last few years, looking for some gold medal revenge. He did not get the gold the last time around, so he's certainly hoping for that. But in the case of Team Canada, you have the most recent first overall NHL draft pick and defenseman Owen Power, playing for the University of Michigan, of course, in the U.S. right now. And we also have the next two likely, or at least projected, first overall selections in the next 2 drafts, including 2022, most likely first round pick, first overall, Shea Wright. And then right now we have Conor Bedard, also makes the team as a 16-year-old in rare company, who's right now projected to be the 2023 first overall selection. Of course, a lot can change. It's quite a ways off, but Bedard has been a player that's been garnering headlines and getting lots of attention for some time, and he's still only 16. So right now, that is what's projected. So lots of future and future first overall picks here to watch. Of course, the Canadian team is captained by Habs prospect Caden Gooley on defense. They have a group of players that had NHL experience this year, which are all part of the leadership group, including assistant captains Cole Perfetti and Jake Neighbors. Of course, Perfetti with the Winnipeg Jets and Jake Neighbors of the St. Louis Blues organization. Even though he's not technically wearing a letter, Mason McTavish is certainly one of the team leaders as well. McTavish, the number 3 overall pick in the 2021 NHL Draft, went to the Anaheim Ducks, had a 9-game showing there, looked really strong, and certainly looks like he'll be a huge part of their future. A big, strong center iceman who can both score and be a playmaker. So McTavish, I think, really fair to say, has a bit of everything and should be a dominant player in this tournament. Of course, I expect him to be led in goal by Red Wings prospect goalie Sebastian Cossa, having another solid year in junior. And of course, you can't forget other guys like Dylan Gunter, Kent Johnson, and Ridley Gregg. All of the 2021 NHL first-round picks, all looking to have real solid seasons here so far. Gregg almost made the NHL roster with the Senators this year. Just came close, went back to junior. Expected to play a big role. And, of course, Johnson as well with Michigan as well. And then you get Dylan Gunter in the Western Hockey League. So all of those players, all expected to play a big role. And I do expect Canada to certainly be in the mix for the gold medal. Hard to say exactly where they finish, so we're not going to make predictions on that here today. We're just previewing here what to expect, but I do, as always, expect Canada to be in the mix. There's no real glaring weaknesses. I think they're pretty solid all around, and we'll see. If anything, they certainly have a good mix in the forward group, especially of some experience with some older players that have, their draft plus 1 year. And of course, in the case of Conor Bedard, he's in company with guys like McDavid and Crosby to make this team at such a young age as well. So we'll see where they go, but I expect a strong tournament for the Canadians. In the case of Team USA, they're captained by the number 5 overall pick from last year's draft and Sens prospect Jake Sanderson. Sanderson's having a really, really good year of college hockey as well. Of North Dakota. Sanderson is expected to be a top pair stud defenseman at the NHL level. At least that's how he's projecting at the current time. And it really will be a huge force for the Americans. We expect them also to have a solid tournament from a fellow defenseman and high pick in the 21 draft. Luke Hughes, of course, will carry on the tradition here from the Hughes brothers. We've seen both of his brothers, Jack and Quinn, play in this tournament in the past and have great success. Top pick in the draft to the Kraken, Matty Beniers, should play a big role here for the Americans as well. They should be led in goal by Hawks prospect goalie Drew Comesso. Of course, he's having himself another decent year as well. And they have a variety of NHL quality players that are either drafted or about to be drafted within the rest of the team as well in the forward group. You get Chaz Lucius. Lucius is certainly going to be a big part of this. Brett Berard. You get Matt Coronado as well on this team. And prospect that's not drafted yet, expected to go pretty high in the 22 draft, Logan Cooley, also on Team USA. And of course, a few more defensemen that are certainly well-known, have been in a few tournaments now, as Tyler Clevin and Brock Faber as well, along with Sanderson, will certainly help anchor that backhand. So I certainly suspect the American team as well to contend and have a strong tournament. Of course, they were the most recent champions last year in Alberta, and they will be the team obviously attempting to be the first team since the 08-09 Canadians to go back-to-back and win gold medals. Can they do it? I think they have a shot. Like I said, it's going to be a tightly contested tournament, though. Difficult to say with any kind of certainty. On to some other teams through the tournament and to the European teams. A few players to watch in Team Sweden. Certainly former first-round picks and Simon Evansson on the back end. He's looking to have a huge tournament as well. Of course, the big, tall, rangy defenseman should be an impact player here for the Swedes. And of course, he'll be playing in front of stud goaltender Jesper Wallstedt as well. Of course, Wallstedt, one of the top prospect goalies outside of the NHL currently. Of course, a Minnesota Wild draft pick in the 2021 draft. In my opinion, was a bit of a steal. I'm surprised he didn't go higher up, especially to a team like the Oilers, who I thought were going to snag him when they had the opportunity. Of course, with Sweden as well as William Eklund. Eklund certainly proven to be one of the top players of the most recent draft class. Looked like he was going to stick with the San Jose Sharks. I mean, they gave him a prolonged look here before they had to make the decision to send him back to Sweden. But Eklund certainly, will highly benefit from that brief NHL experience. It certainly appears to be a big part of the Sharks' future. He did not look out of place, and based on how he played, like I said, some people were surprised that they decided to send him back and not keep him, but some teams prefer to have their prospects not really be rushed. And of course, if the team's not expected to be highly contending and make the playoffs and, potential Stanley Cup teams, sometimes they don't feel the need. They don't necessarily think they should be part of a losing franchise while they're so young. They can go down to a lower level in junior or elsewhere and play a much bigger role. So certainly interesting to see how Eklund progresses here down the road, but they should be your most highly impact players for the Swedes. The Russian team will certainly be led in goal by Yaroslav Askarov. Askarov, another highly touted prospect here, should be able to steal some games for the Russians if he's at the top of his game. He certainly had a bit of a, somewhat inconsistent play at these tournaments in the past, but Askarov, in my opinion, is one of the top young goaltenders. Of course, a Predators prospect here. Should expect himself to have a real solid career once he makes the jump to North America. He will definitely be the backbone here for the Russians, and I think if he's got a real solid tournament, he's got the ability to steal some games, and if he's a little bit off, then he could also be, the consort to go the other way. So the Russian teams have been a little bit of boom and bust in the last decade, and I expect this team to be somewhat similar, but you're certainly going to get some exciting play out of a guy like Matvei Michkov as well. Certainly very skilled player. You don't be surprised to see him try either the Michigan type of goal or the new Zegras style goal that we saw with Zegras and Sonny Milano. Like, he's the type of player who's crafty and skilled enough to try those types of plays and confident enough to try to pull it off as well. He's certainly very, very capable of providing some highlight reel stuff in that regard. So obviously he'll play a huge role in the Russian offense. When it comes to the Finns, there are going to be some very interesting storylines there as well. One of the top players you'll see is the defenseman Tappi Niemela, of course, the Leafs prospect. You get Robbie Herventi of the Ottawa Senators, had a real strong camp as well. Herventi very well could project into their future plans. And of course, you have some draft eligible prospects on the Finns that are going to be very interesting to watch as well, including Joaquin Kemmel, who right now by many draft ranking services have him being anywhere from number 2, 3, 4. I've seen him as he's definitely a top 10 prospect, no doubt about that. He's a real solid hockey player, but depending on where you look, he could go as high as even 2 or 3 in the draft, and certainly getting a lot of attention out there. So be interesting to see how he performs against a lot of players that are, for the most part, a year older or more, in some cases 2 years older. These guys that are not drafted, typically you don't necessarily see a lot of high-end success because it is more of a tournament for the guys that are in their draft plus 1 years, not the ones that are not drafted. So it is possible we could see a breakout performance, but it won't be shocking, and it should not be considered a disappointment if you don't see that, considering, like I said, there's some of the younger players here in the tournament. And of course, Brad Lambert, of course, he's Canadian and Finnish. Of course, his uncle is Lane Lambert, who coaches for the New York Islanders as an assistant coach. So his father is Canadian and his mother is Finnish, which is why he has dual citizenship here. But he's, for the most part, lived and grown up playing hockey in Finland. I believe he did play briefly in Canada as a youngster, but not a whole lot. He's primarily been growing up in Finland, which is why he's chosen to represent them at international competitions. And certainly, I know when I was first becoming familiar with the player the last couple of years, it was a little bit interesting to see a guy with a Canadian name in Finland, but that's just the way it goes, right? You get a lot of international, multinational families like that, and he certainly falls into that category. But he, at one point, was in the conversation for the first overall pick in the 2022 draft with Shane Wright. So he's kind of fallen out of favor here a little bit. He's certainly seen his draft stock fall a fair bit, and now most draft ranking services have him anywhere from, I think the highest I've seen him recently is probably 8 or 9, somewhere around 10, and I've seen someone down like around 20. So of course we saw a Finnish prospect in Atu Räty, have the same situation happen to him last year, and he was drafted still, high enough, but he ended up being he went to the Islanders as well. I believe it was in the second round, high in the second round, I believe it was. So, at one point he was in the conversation for first overall. So that's quite a fall from grace when you think about it. And this guy could be in the same type of scenario. You just never know. When you get a player and all of a sudden a bunch of teams get concerns about inconsistent play or something that they, develops that they're not fond of, and then you just see the stock just fall. It can either turn out to be a draft steal for a team who grabs them late, or in some cases, maybe they don't find the game to mature to the point that they were expected to a year or two out from the draft. So it's really difficult to say. These players obviously have a ton of pressure on them. There's a big stage, and they have a lot to prove to try to secure their NHL future careers here in the balance. It's not the end-all be-all, but it will play a role for some of these guys waiting to be drafted. This is a major opportunity to showcase themselves to NHL scouts and teams that they should be picked higher, and it could be a big part of their future. So I'm very curious to see how Lambert really responds in this tournament and how he performs here for Team Finland. So as I mentioned, this is going to be a highly contested tournament. It's really hard to predict who's going to win. I think you could probably say between the Finns, the Canadians, the Americans, the Swedes, even the Russians, I think will be in the mix. It's really difficult to pinpoint who is going to win, but there's all kinds of great hockey, especially with the NHL on their holiday break right now. At least that gives us something high end here for hockey fans to look forward to. So certainly recommend you check out the tournament in Canada's broadcast on TSN. They're the main television provider for this tournament and has been for several years. I'm not quite sure where it's broadcast in other areas. I believe NHL Network carries part of it in the U.S. Can't speak for the Europeans and where you get the coverage, but certainly it's something that I'm sure most of you can find where to watch it. If you're not used to watching this tournament, you want to check it out. It gives you a glimpse of the future for NHL hockey or European leagues, depending on where you're from and what you kind of follow for professional level hockey. And at the same time, it gives you great competitive hockey to watch regardless. It's very highly entertaining. So let me know your thoughts on this tournament, what you're expecting. If you want to make some predictions in the comments, we can discuss that as well. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.